to Raw is Jericho!
Oh, let's get ready to suck it! And that's the bottom line.
I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest.
This is The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast starring Renny D and friends. Thanks for listening to The Pencil. Subscribe to the show on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.
Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another fantastic episode of The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast with me, Renny D, and as always, my boy, Dirty, on the phone with me. Dirtis, how's it going, bro?
No, it's going well. It's good to be back this week. It's been a long one. Lots of stuff to talk about. Summer Slam Sunday, Raw last night. It's going to be a busy one. We'll try to fit it all in.
Yeah, we got a busy last 48 hours in professional wrestling, and let me just start right away. I'm not happy. I've been happier. I'll tell you that right now. For those of you wondering why I'm not happy, let me correct it. I'm a little pissed off because last Tuesday on The Pencil, Travis and I went through the WWE Summer Slam card, and yes, although we forgot the Wyatt versus Chris Jericho match, we made our predictions, and I lost. I will straight up tell you that I did not win, and I've been in the business 11 years, and this fucking guy hasn't wrestled a day in his... Actually, I take that back. He performed in one match with me, and he beats me in our first pay-per-view prediction on this podcast. I'm not happy. How do you feel?
It felt great. It felt just great to go through that. I'll tell you, 7-1 is what I finished in the 8 matches. I felt fantastic about my picks on Tuesday when I made them. I felt better about them as the week went forward. I'm frustrated that I went through a couple minutes last week explaining why Dolph Ziggler was my favorite wrestler. I then proceeded to pick him to lose his match at WrestleMania, at SummerSlam, only to have that be the only loss on my record so far. I'm happy with my 7-1 record. I understand that I got a victory over you, but I was looking to go perfect, and I thought I had the perfect picks. I'll deal with 7-1 though. It's an exciting time, exciting start for me.
Yeah, the show started off hot. Dolph Ziggler and The Miz, and yes, people, we are talking SummerSlam right now, which is we're just 48 hours removed from the biggest party of the summer, from Los Angeles, California. Great show, first off. Before I get into the matches, I thought it was a fantastic pay-per-view. I thought top to bottom, everybody performed very well. I did expect a couple of the matches to not be as great as I thought, or as some people maybe thought they were going to be, and they proved me right. And there were a match or two that maybe didn't live up to my expectations. But overall, before we get into the analysis of each individual match, Travis, I solid pay-per-view. I give it an 8 out of 10, at least. I was highly entertained throughout the 3 hours of the pay-per-view. Very happy with what they put on TV. What was your takeaway as far as, did it meet your expectations? Did it come in below? Is it just right on point? I guess, how did you feel that SummerSlam came off to you?
It met my expectations, and the reason I know it met my expectations is because 48 hours later, I'm still thinking about it. I was still breaking it down in my head today, thinking where they're going to go with the future storylines, where they're going to take certain matches, certain feuds. I thought it was a great pay-per-view, possibly the best. I think it's the best pay-per-view that I've seen since WrestleMania.
Yes.
I was actually considering, Ryan, and I wanted to ask you this. You and I were in the stands for WrestleMania. What are your thoughts on the idea that it was as good as WrestleMania, if not better, when you break down the card from top to bottom? The reason I bring it up is because I read on a website earlier today that some people are saying that it was better than WrestleMania 30 in New Orleans, where we were in April. I'm not about to say that. What's your take?
I don't think it was as good as WrestleMania 30. I'm on record saying that I think WrestleMania 30 was probably the best WrestleMania that I've ever seen. And that's saying a lot, because we could go back to WrestleMania 18 in Houston. I think of Rock Stone Cold. There's a lot of different WrestleManias that have been fantastic. I'm on record saying that I thought this WrestleMania was the best of all time. Maybe I'm biased. I was there live and in the stands, and maybe that's why I'm biased by saying that SummerSlam wasn't better than WrestleMania. But I think WrestleMania is that show that has that big time show feel that contributes to the overall feeling of how good an actual event is. I mean, the event could be the absolute shits, but if you put the tag on it that it's a WrestleMania, it automatically is going to be 2 stars, better because it's WrestleMania, even if the matches aren't that great. Now, with that being said, SummerSlam is the second biggest pay-per-view for the WWE, and I wrote a blog earlier this week on our website that compared SummerSlam to the Golden Globes if WrestleMania is the Academy Awards. And I don't think it was as good as WrestleMania, but it was damn good. And it was the best pay-per-view since WrestleMania. I'm on board 100% with that. And I'm excited about the future. I'm questioning some of the moves and what they're going to do as far as booking goes, but that's why we have this podcast and we have this forum to discuss what we think. And I'm interested to get your take on that. So let's get into that, man. Let's go ahead. What was, as far as going back to SummerSlam, show starts off hot. Your boy Dolph Ziggler over for the IC title in a match that I thought they really tried to steal the show early on. It was fantastic. Psychology-wise, it was great. I thought the match was really, really good. I thought the Miz and Dolph both really performed well, and they were pretty flawless together in the ring. I think the only thing that people maybe have been questioning is when Dolph tried to go for the Famouser and the Miz blocked it. It happened so quick, I don't think we had a chance to really adjust to what was going on and maybe thought that Dolph actually hit the Famouser. But that's just nitpicking from my standpoint because I'm a wrestler. Did you get a chance to watch that whole match from start to finish?
I did, and I thought it was very well done. I was excited to see Ziggler win. I didn't think they would put him over in that situation. They're in Hollywood. The Miz has his new character going with the Hollywood A-list star situation. I thought it made sense to have him go over there as the heel, take out a guy that people were pulling for, but certainly not against that situation and that decision to have Ziggler go over. It got off to a hot start. I like where that feud is going. That's one that I think, and maybe this comes from a fan's perspective, and you can have a little bit more insight on this, Ryan. Not everybody on the card can be a main eventer, and I think Dolph Ziggler and The Miz are exactly where they need to be on the card to be opening shows, to be putting on. I mean, they seem to have great in-ring chemistry, and I think this is a feud that can go on for another couple pay-per-views, and nobody's going to be disappointed with it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, and I think that transcended over into Monday Night Raw for them having their rematch, that they really want to build feuds between superstars now to make things mean more in the long run. And case in point, I mean, if you're going to have the world title on somebody who might not necessarily be at, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Brock Lesnar is not going to be at every single Monday Night Raw. He sure as hell is not going to be on SmackDown, not a single one. I would anticipate him being on every pay-per-view, but you need mid-carders and you need those other matches to fill the pay-per-views and to fill these Monday Night Raws and these SmackDowns. And characters or wrestlers like The Miz and Dolph fit that mold perfectly. And because they're so damn good. The Miz is so damn good at being a heel. You have to hate him. He's smug-faced. He's cocky. He reminds me a lot of you and I, Travis, to be honest with you. Outside this podcast, if anybody ever has the opportunity of meeting us two at a bar somewhere, we can be just like The Miz. I mean, we're not all about wearing sunglasses in public and at night, but the fact of the matter is we are full of ourselves, but because we can be. So, and I think that's what The Miz does a little bit too. And people who don't put in the time in themselves, I guess, are the ones probably, for the most part, the ones who hate him the most because they want to be what he is. They want to be Dolph Ziggler. They want to be people like you and I. And it's not easy. So, and I think that's great that they have those guys that can continue a feud, hopefully carry it over into Night of Champions, and just keep going with it, because I think that's something that's really missing from professional wrestling as of late are those long occurring feuds. And the last long occurring feud that I can really, I guess, remember as far as matches go, I would think CM Punk and the Paul Heyman situation, it was, the friend became foe, and then that became a feud between those two, but Paul Heyman wasn't a non-wrestler, but people were emotionally invested in that storyline. I hope that they can get back to that with this storyline. Obviously, I guess that's a pretty good segue into another match on the card that I thought was the best match on the card, and I'd like to hear your input on that too. But Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose, I went on record saying it was going to be the best match of the night. To me, it was. They delivered. They had some really cool things that they did with the Lumberjacks that I thought was fantastic. What was your big takeaway from that match?
It was the match. It was the match of the night. There's no doubt about that. I agree with you. I think the stipulation was bad. I don't think that it was a good decision for going into the SummerSlam. But those two stole the show like they always do. You could put them in any match, and I think they're going to do exactly what they did on Sunday night. It was confusing to me why the Lumberjacks didn't do what the Lumberjacks were there to do. I mean, I thought they would not allow them to go into the crowd, but then Kane comes down at the end, and Kane, I don't really know his deal with being involved with as much as he can be, and I'm not really invested in him as a character or what he's doing usually, but I came out of that match talking about the couple things I didn't know or I didn't like, and then all of a sudden at the end I was like, but Rollins and Ambrose absolutely knocked it out of the park. I mean, they did everything they needed to do. They gave us the match of the night at SummerSlam, and they're going to give us the match of the night on any pay-per-view that they are going against each other for the next couple months. And I, for one, hope that we get to see that match 3, 4, 5, 6 more times for my money. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, and the thing is, that brings us then to last night's show. They had the rematch, and I almost want to say the match last night was almost better than the one they had at SummerSlam. And the reason being is, I mean, obviously the chair spot was fantastic. The cinder block spot, whether you want to believe it's possible or not, that's a whole different story. And we'll get into the reasoning behind that spot and why they did that. But the match last night, Jesus, man, that could have main evented any pay-per-view. And I think these two, specifically coming from where they came from, they come from the independent scene like I did. And they know the history of the WWE. They know that the WWE is all about, or was all about, bodybuilders and people now going through their developmental system. So I think when Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose go out there and they're like, hey, we're two quote-unquote indie guys in this match, let's tear the fucking roof off this place. Let's really do something special to show the guys in back, i.e. Triple H. Obviously, Triple H does love these guys, or he's not giving them the main event on Raw, but let's show them that we do deserve this spot. We might not be the biggest guys on the roster because they're not, but we're the best. And back-to-back nights, I mean, they went out there, they stole the show on Sunday at SummerSlam, they stole the show on Monday Night Raw in the main event in Las Vegas. Very, very, very entertained as a wrestler and as a wrestling fan. I think if the WWE can can imitate basically what they did last night on Raw moving forward for more Raws, the product is going to be untouchable again. It's going to be fantastic. I mean, we're in this, I guess, quote-unquote reality era that they want to call it, and it's getting good. And I hope that they can keep at it, keep going hard at it, and keep using these guys to the best of their ability, I guess, and give us what we expect out of a professional wrestling match, but don't take away that entertainment value because they need that to cater to their audience that they have. And I guess part of that entertainment value, if we're looking at SummerSlam as the whole, was the swerve of the night. And when we made our predictions, Travis, initially, I was thinking more along the lines of Daniel Bryan, Triple H. It came to its tipping point at WrestleMania. Daniel Bryan won the strap. Awesome. I thought maybe that was going to be the similar situation with SummerSlam being the second biggest pay-per-view and having the McMahon and having a Bryan, in the match. Now, I never once gave it a legit thought, and I'm shocked that I didn't, of a Nikki Bella heel turn until right before SummerSlam started. And when I thought about that as a possibility, right, because this was the last match, by the way, people, in Travis and I's bet and our predictions, if Brie wins this match, we're squared up. We tie. We go into the Lesnar match, or I think there might have been one more match before that too. But we go into the last, right? Yeah, the Randy Orton Roman Reigns match. We go in tied. We split a bottle. Nope. Definitely got beat on that. I'm not shocked with the heel turn. I actually really, really like it. It kind of spices up a female aspect of the show or keeps something going. Did you have, I guess, an opinion on that one way or the other? Did you not care, or were you were you expecting it first off? Did you expect that to happen?
I went into the show expecting Stephanie McMahon to win the match. I didn't know exactly how I expected her to do so, but I felt that going into SummerSlam, she had carried that feud so much because, from my perspective, I feel like both the Bellas, and mostly Brie because she's on TV more than Nikki, simply just don't have what I think keeps me my attention. I don't know if it's something to do with the fact that I don't know that they really can wrestle as well as I expect them to be able to. I think there's a dozen women on the roster that are better wrestlers, a half dozen at least that are better on the mics, and I don't know if it's because who they're with off camera. I don't know why. They're twin sisters, I guess. Maybe that's why they get where they are. I don't invest myself in the Bellas in any way, shape, or form. So I thought Stephanie was going to win. I think the heel turn certainly makes them more interesting, but I want to be more invested in this than I am because I know that there's people that do think that this is one of the better feuds going in WWE, but it's not doing it for me. It's not doing it for me at all.
What about, and this is kind of a different off track, not wrestling related, but what about seeing Stephanie McMahon and Nikki Bella in the same ring at the same time on Raw? I was a fan, not particularly because of the professional wrestling aspect, but they looked damn good. I mean, those two looked fantastic. I guess
those two women. I'm certainly on board with Nikki Bella being on TV as much as possible because the woman looks like a woman. I'll say that some of the women that they have are looking like sticks or a little too skinny or a little too that, whatever they might be. Nikki Bella looks like a woman and she's filled out like a woman and she's absolutely beautiful. And her and Stephanie in the ring, I mean, they've got four of the greatest assets in the entire company in the ring at one time. And that's going to be a positive, no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. It is, I mean, to think that John Cena and Triple H, two of the biggest guys in the company, well, I mean, good for them. I mean, I'm not going to say they outkick their coverage because they make bank, but they look good. Stephanie looked good in her wrestling attire as well on Sunday. So I was
those are women. Those are women you want to have on your arm whenever you're going out on a Friday night. There's no doubt about that.
Or coming home on a Friday night, however you want to see
it.
However you want to see
morning,
it. Whatever you want to do, that works. So, all right. Well, I know there was a lot of different matches on SummerSlam, and before we get to the main event and talk about the destruction that was John Cena, can we talk about, I guess, my biggest disappointment of SummerSlam, and I knew this going in. I said it on our website, Bray Wyatt, Chris Jericho. I thought the promos leading up to the match were fantastic. I thought Bray Wyatt calling in to Chris Jericho's podcast was brilliant, but I don't think many people know about the podcast, so I'm not really sure what that really did for it. But the match itself, Chris Jericho referred to the match itself on Monday as a fantastic match. I disagree. I did not think the match was that great. I just don't think that their styles click well in the ring, and I think Jericho's repertoire as far as what he's been doing inside the ring hasn't changed. He hasn't really, I guess, reinvented himself per se in every comeback that he has. When he comes back to the WWE, he does the same shtick, and it's fine. He has a fan base that likes that. I would like him to fine-tune it a little bit, or at least add something or do something different. He failed to do that in my book. The match didn't deliver, and I know we're going to see a third installment of this match at Night of Champions. I mean, that's the exact direction that's going. Did you enjoy the match? I mean, I have a hard time. I thought it was probably one of the, outside the Swagger-Rusev match, which I was very disappointed in the finish, I thought it was one of the worst matches of the night, personally.
It's the only thing worse than the match is just the feud itself. It needs to be done. It needs to be put in the shredder and forgot about. I don't know what beating Chris Jericho is gaining for Bray Wyatt. It's not entertaining to watch, and it's absolutely shocking to me because of how entertaining Bray Wyatt was 60 days ago or 90 days ago, that now that entrance, the music, it's not doing the same thing for me because I know they're following it up with a feud that I'm not interested in. Even whenever the John Cena feud was going on, it was super interesting to me, even though the way it ended was lackluster because of the way that it ended up Cena winning over Evil, all this kind of stuff that people don't like all the time. But, I mean, I think this is worse. than losing to Cena. I think this is worse for Wyatt than losing to Cena.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, obviously the Wyatt has been very interesting because of the two characters he's been in the ring with, Daniel Bryan and John Cena previously. Obviously John Cena is the biggest name in professional wrestling, not just the WWE, in professional wrestling right now, might be of all time, and he really elevated Bray Wyatt to that character that was must-see TV. And Bray still is, to an extent, some must-see TV because his promos are so damn good. But I just, and as much as I liked Chris Jericho, and as much as I guess he has a place in the WWE with his part-time status, I just think he needs to do something to freshen it up. And there wasn't enough traction in that match. I don't think they ever really built it to where it was supposed to be to really get us emotionally invested in that match. So I guess I'm glad we're on the same page with that one. And let's dive in to the main event of SummerSlam. Brock Lesnar absolutely destroying John Cena. And mind you, people, you don't see a 15-time world heavyweight champion, the face of the company, the man who sold more merchandise than Stone Cold Steve Austin, get squashed in a main event of the second biggest pay-per-view ever until Sunday. And that's exactly what happened in the match. And I remember texting you, Travis, early on in this match when John Cena maybe had two offensive moves, and I think that they were a punch, and he potentially put his STFU, as he used to call it, on. And I'm just like, he's not getting any offense. This is brewing to be an upset. Cena might go over for the title. And that would have been shocking. And they just didn't. It didn't go that way at all. He just got zero offense. And this, to me, tells you how great John Cena actually is. For him to lay down and basically die for Lesnar proves that he is a company man, first off. He does what's best for business, and he cares about the WWE and its product before he cares about himself. What's your take?
I couldn't say it better myself. I thought it was another Lesnar match, and for the second consecutive Lesnar match, an absolute shocking result. And I thought that the looks on the faces of the fans in Hollywood were the exact same looks on the faces of the people in New Orleans that I saw live when he beat The Undertaker. It was almost that shocking. I don't know if I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment and put it on that pedestal that it was that unbelievable. But just like you said, 2 minutes into the match, 5 minutes into the match, 8 minutes into the match, it felt like exactly what you texted me. It felt like Cena's going to overcome bad. He's going to put his 5 moves of doom. He's going to somehow get a pin. He's going to get the victory. It's going to be same old, same old. That would have been shocking. However WWE did it, they shocked us even more with what they put on the table. 16 minutes of an absolute ass-kicking of John Cena. People have been asking for it. People never believed it would happen. And you are right. This says just as much about John Cena as it says about Brock Lesnar. And I'm telling you, I compared it today when I was talking to a coworker. There's music genres that you love. You love country music. You love rap music. You love rock music. No matter what you love, there's certain times that you want to listen to it. And Sunday night, that wasn't a slow George Strait song that you want to listen to with your girlfriend and hold her hand. That was a headbanging Papa Roach, Theory of the Dead Man, Nickelback rock song that you listen to when you're kicking somebody's ass. And I'm telling you right now, John Cena and Brock Lesnar, they weren't out there putting on a symphony, but they put out a number one hit. And it doesn't matter what genre it is. That was absolutely beautiful. One of the best matches I've ever seen. Yeah,
and to be honest with you, I was pretty upset after the match for a little bit because, and this was maybe the fan part of me, I was upset for John Cena, the fact that he got so destroyed. But then when I had a chance to really think about it, I thought, well, he got destroyed. Maybe the wrestling community who loves the chant, Cena sucks, they're the same community who actually, they respect the hell out of John Cena. They do. Anybody who's a wrestling fan respects John Cena. Is he growing old and tired to some people? Yes, absolutely. I get that. but for him to get beat as badly as he did, I wonder if the WWE was trying to maybe get some sympathy for John and get some of these people to think, wow, he really, really does do what's best for us, but then when I read that he got the na chance afterwards, I just don't know what they're going to do with John moving forward. I don't think it helped John's character at all, to be honest with you, by getting squashed. I think it may have hurt him just a little bit because he kept preaching he had more heart than Cena. He is going to fight. He really didn't do either of those two. So I don't know. I mean, I guess just looking into it, that aspect of things, I wasn't that happy. But I think whoever is writing this stuff knows where they're going with it. And I just, it's going to be, it might have not been the best technical wrestling match of all time, but it sure as hell is rememberable. And we're going to remember this match for a long time, for the 16 minutes, for the 16 suplexes, for Lesnar, just the beast that he is, just ripping John Cena apart. And mind
you, it wasn't Bret Hart against the British Bulldog. It was not Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. It was an absolute storytelling masterpiece by two of the best in the business. Lesnar can get talked about however he wants about the way that he doesn't talk and Paul Heyman does his talking for him, how he doesn't do this and he doesn't do that. Lesnar put on a show telling a story in the ring. He mocks The Undertaker after the AA. I know I texted you about that, Ryan, sitting up in the middle of the ring laughing at Cena. The way that he followed him around basically like he was a small cat and just kicking him in the head throughout the match, it was masterful.
Yeah, I mean, it really is leading the WWE into the new direction. And as far as, are we on the road to WrestleMania right now? Maybe. And that is something we're definitely going to get into. But I have just been informed, ladies and gentlemen, that our guest for this evening is ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get our guest, Jason Powell from ProWrestling.net, on the phone. We're going to discuss with him SummerSlam. We're going to discuss with him Raw. We're going to ask him about his past in professional wrestling. One thing that we do want to ask him is about the racism issue in the WWE. After we're done with Jason, we're going to come back. Travis and I have a couple things we want to finish up on, including the Seth Rollins-Dean Ambrose match from Raw. Also, a couple news and rumors, some fan questions, and then again, we do have a brand new segment that we're going to end with here this week. It is going to be Rennie's Rants and Dirty's Deposition. So hang with us, folks. We're going to be right back with Jason Powell from ProWrestling.net. Make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast. You can download this podcast on PodBean, Stitcher, or follow us on YouTube. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Chris with Spot Monkey Media. Are you a professional wrestler, a promoter, a business owner? Spot Monkey Media offers creative media solutions for your brand or business. Whether it's merchandise design or promotional material for your next event, Spot Monkey Media will work hands-on to bring your ideas to life. Spot Monkey Media. Create your legacy. Get a free high five when you mention this podcast. Connect with us on Twitter at Spot Monkey Media.
You think you know me?
We are having a great episode, but coming up next is our guest of the evening. You've been listening to The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast with me, Renny D, and my friends. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. And follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast. All right, everybody, we are back, and we are honored and actually pretty excited here on The Pencil to have the founder, the head editor of ProWrestling.net, Jason Powell, on the line with us. You can follow him on Twitter at ProWrestlingNet. ProWrestling.net is the website. Go there, check it out, subscribe to everything he has for you to subscribe to because you get some great information. Jason, thank you so much, man, for joining us. How you doing?
Hey, great to be here, guys.
Cool, and you know, we're pretty excited to have you on to have another perspective on professional wrestling. It's been a crazy 48 hours. I'm sure you probably haven't gotten a ton of sleep lately. How have the last 48 hours been for you? Since you have to run your own professional wrestling website, what has the last 48 hours been for you in the life of Jason?
Sunday was leading up to the show isn't too bad most times, but then the news came out about Bully Ray telling the TNA locker room that he doesn't expect to be back. He expected that to be his last date. That broke before the show, and so I had trying to track down some info on that. Then you had SummerSlam, of course, then the late-night audio shows, then up early on Monday, and that turns into about an 18-hour day, and then get a little bit of sleep, get up, and put in another 18-hour day with the SmackDown tapings and everything else. So, yeah, that's the fun.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's fun because how long you've been a professional wrestling fan for, Jason? How many years?
Oh gosh, 30 plus. I don't remember exactly when I don't remember the year when I first saw pro wrestling, but I'm 42 now, and I remember seeing it the first time. I just don't remember my age because I was at a hockey tournament, and I don't remember if I was playing in it or my stepfather was coaching his team. But I saw the AWA on television for the first time and was just captivated. And shortly thereafter, we didn't have cable. We lived too far out in the middle of nowhere to have cable back in those days. So when we stayed overnight at the hotel for hockey tournaments, I always looked forward to it and hoped and prayed that the game times didn't conflict with WCW, World Championship Wrestling, when that was on the Superstation back in those days.
Right. And now for our younger listeners out there who aren't familiar with the AWA, back in the day they had a territory system for professional wrestling, basically similar to minor league baseball. AWA was very, very popular in the Minnesota area where Jason is based out of, where he does all his work on the website. So you think of guys like Shawn Michaels, you think of guys like Ric Flair. They actually came from the AWA. So those were back in the good old days of professional wrestling, as they call it. What's your biggest, I guess, with you being a professional wrestling fan for as long as you have been, and I've watched professional wrestling my entire life, and being involved in the business the way I've been, I've watched a lot of old AWA stuff and old Mid-South stuff because the wrestling back then was fantastic, and it's getting great again now. What is the biggest difference to you, I guess, Jason, from growing up watching professional wrestling as a fan, really getting into the sport of professional wrestling, to now, more so where, yes, you're still a fan, but this is your job now. So you are, day-to-day basis following professional wrestling. Has anything, I guess, I'm sure things have changed, but what's been the biggest change for you, if you could put your finger on one big change?
Well, just going from being a fan into covering this for a living was quite the change. You have to separate the two in order to do the job well, in my opinion. I mean, believe me, you still have your fan moments. You get awed by certain angles or a great match or something like that, and the appreciation is still there, but you have to be more of a critic, and you have to be more of a news gatherer. It's a labor of love. I wouldn't be putting these hours in for really anything else. So, there's still the passion for pro wrestling there. But I think that's got to be probably the biggest change for me personally, was just going from that super fandom when I was a kid into just covering the business full time.
And when did you?
That's what I want. That was something I wanted to touch on with Jason. Actually, was the idea that you do have to draw that line between fandom, between covering it professionally. I wanted to ask on Sunday at SummerSlam, did you have any of those moments? Did you have one of those, it didn't feel like I was working moments? It kind of felt like I was a fan again?
Yeah, I would say main event, really. A little bit for Rollins and Ambrose, but then anytime you see just something unusual in pro wrestling, and I'm not talking like the campy comedy and things like that, but just an unusual match like we got with Brock Lesnar and John Cena, where it was just so lopsided,
right.
That really brought it out. And for that matter, so did the last time those guys faced one another, because it's just such a physical style, and we don't normally get that from WWE. And I give John Cena so much credit for going in there and taking the pounding that he did in that first match, and then this time around giving up so much. And that's as lopsided of a title match as I can remember seeing on a WWE pay-per-view.
Right. And before we had you on, Jason, Travis and I were talking about what that match actually said for John Cena as far as what type of company man he actually is, because he's the face of the company. He's a 15-time World Heavyweight Champion or WWE Champion. And for him to do exactly what he did just says how much he loves the business and how much he loves the WWE, that he put it before himself. What's your take on why the WWE decided to have it basically be a squash match per se, I guess, on Sunday? Why do you think that they went that route with the match?
I think they really want to make Brock Lesnar a special attraction. And I mean, he already is to some extent, but I think this, if they do it right, I mean, they're going back to that match at Night of Champions, which actually surprises me a little bit. I thought they would take their time with that. But I think the fact that he was so dominant there, you kind of recreate that Lesnar aura. And, yeah, ending the streak did it somewhat. I still feel like that match was a little flat. But going out there and just destroying Cena the way he did, all of a sudden you're looking at Brock Lesnar as this unbeatable monster. And so now, we don't know what his schedule is going to be, if he's going to be appearing on every pay-per-view, or if it's with the limited dates that he has, if he's going to miss some. So when he does wrestle, if it is limited and he does miss some, it should feel like a big deal when Brock Lesnar defends that title. I think it actually works to their advantage to not have him on television every single week. I mean, that's what I grew up on. We may have seen Nick Bockwinkel and Bobby Heenan cut promos back in the day, but it wasn't like we saw the world champion in the ring at all times. And really, I mean, that same for WWF back when Hulk Hogan was the champion. If you watched all those hours of syndicated television shows they had with all those squash matches, you might get a Hulk Hogan promo in there, maybe, but there was a lot of weeks you didn't. You knew he was the top star, but you had to wait for like WWE or WWF at the time to come to your town, or Saturday night's main event. The champion doesn't get old as quickly. You don't have that burnout factor when you're seeing the guy all the time, and so I just think it really creates a special feel for when Brock Lesnar does defend that championship.
Right, yeah, I'm 100% with you. And again, guys, you can follow Jason on Twitter at ProWrestlingNet. He has great information. Travis and I actually use the site all the time to keep up with what's going on in the world of professional wrestling, the stuff that we don't actually have access to. Jason, when did you get involved in the professional aspect of professional wrestling, as in covering the sport, and what year was it that you started doing that?
I think it was 1997 or 98. I started at PWTorch.com. Well, actually, it was before there was a website. It was just the Torch newsletter. And I was kind of brought in. I was longtime friends with Wade Keller, and we'd gone to numerous matches together over the years. And he brought me in to kind of be the jack of all trades. He was mailing out the newsletter, so I had the unenviable task of, at that time, there was a machine that printed out all the labels, and it would... something would always go wrong. It's just a comedy of errors with the equipment at the time. So that there was that, and just helping out with various things, whatever needed to be done around the office. And then that kind of evolved quickly into doing a lot of the writing, and eventually, it really wasn't all that long in. I just had such a passion for it and started writing, and next thing you know, I was the assistant editor. And so I was at the Torch for, roughly 5 years, I believe, give or take. And then from there, I moved on to Fanball.com and did the fantasy football and fantasy hockey coverage, and really enjoyed that. And then came back to pro wrestling. I mean, I still dabbled in pro wrestling during that time and was certainly keeping an eye on the product. Sure. But then I've been doing ProWrestling.net now for 6.5 years, I think it is now. February was the 6-year anniversary, so 6.5 years I've been doing .net.
Perfect. Yeah.
All right, Jason. Now I got to interrupt. Are you still in fantasy football mode? Are you getting into it yet?
Yeah, in fact, I have my first auction of the year coming up on Thursday, and I wish it was a nice, easy one, but this is the one where it's offensive and defensive players. The league was actually created, it's the Insanity League, and it was created basically to test the Fanball scoring system back in the day to include, anything you can think of. And boy, the first year I played, I'm like, this is just too much. And because I just, like most people, had stuck with offense and a team defense. But the more I got into it, the more fun it was. But the problem is the auction is always like the first auction/draft that I have of the year. And so I'm just always way behind. And sure enough, we have the auction Thursday, and I know just enough to be dangerous on the offensive side, and haven't even looked at the defensive side yet, so it's going to be ugly.
I hear you. I got my first one a week from Thursday, and I've gone through about 3 mock drafts, and I know none of them are going to end up how I want them to be anyway. So I might as well just go into it blind, I figure.
They never do. It's usually, because I guess maybe it's because I still play with a lot of the guys that work in the industry. And so that's nice. But then my main league is just, we've been doing this, I think this is 17 years or something. and it's not a bunch of guys that work in the industry. It's just a bunch of longtime friends. And so that's the one even though it's like, it's in some ways you would think it would be the least competitive of the leagues I'm in, it's the one I put the most effort into, and I'll do all these mock drafts for that. It never goes the way you think it's going to. And usually it works to my advantage, though, where I'm sitting there going, I didn't think this guy was going to be there. Are they crazy? But, yeah, I mean, I still put in the time. I'll still be sitting there the night before my draft doing all these mocks and looking at all the various scenarios, and then get there on Saturday, and all of that will go out the window like free picks in.
Exactly. I've been there. All right, back to wrestling. Sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
No, that's perfectly fine. And actually, I was going to touch on Jason. You mentioned that when you started at the PW Torch, it was all print then, and Travis actually comes from print as well. He's a newspaper editor or worked in the newspaper for quite a while. Hosting or having your own website now, and information being as instantaneous as it is with Twitter, how has that changed the game for you, Jason? On having your own website, it's not. You don't print a newsletter anymore and send it out, and that's when people get their news. People can turn to Twitter 10 seconds later and get information, or a TMZ video of Brock Lesnar coming out of a Morton Steakhouse after his win at Summer Slam. How has that changed the game for you?
Well, it just required me to be on so much more. Back in the Torch days, it was I was full time, but I could go home and not think about wrestling for a weekend. And now it's, if I'm out, I have to have my phone with me. I mean, if I go to the gym in the morning, I bring the laptop with. I mean, it's just, you have to always be on. I mean, I'm up until 2 o'clock in the morning, and one of the last things I'll do is check just to make sure there's nothing breaking, and then go to bed. And then there's times where I wake up and go, oh, great, something broke in the middle of the night. So it just, you don't get that break anymore, this instant news era that we're in. But it's a lot of fun, too. I mean, there's just so much more to cover now than there used to be, even though there's not all of the territories like there were way back in the day.
Right. And it's obviously with the new digital age, there are things like these podcasts, and you actually have your own podcast that you do as well. And Travis actually had some time here today to listen to your podcast and stuff. How is that going for you? Where can people hear your podcast, and what type of information, I guess, do you cover on your podcast?
Oh, I mean, everything going on in the industry, really. I mean, we have a lot of stuff we keep on the member side of things. The .NET Weekly audio show, part 1 and 2, a lot of times we have first-run news items in there that just haven't been reported anywhere. It's certainly, for those who are not familiar with the site, it's not a news with a Z site where we just steal everybody's news and don't give credit and all those things. But the podcast itself, the all-access podcast that people can check out, blogtalkradio.com/ProWrestlingDOTNET. And if it's easier just to go to the site, ProWrestling.net, to find links to that, go for it. I just wrapped up season 1 of the live show. I was doing Monday nights after Raw for about 90 minutes taking phone calls, and that just wrapped up last night because I am a football fanatic, and I also didn't want to compete with the NFL on Mondays. But we're still doing live, or not live shows, but we're still having a lot of all-access content, including X-Pac, Sean X-Pac Waltman, and Johnny Fairplay of Survivor fame. They do a weekly podcast as well. The new one, in fact, just went up today, and that is a weekly all-access podcast, so everybody can check that out for free. And hopefully if people like what we're doing on the free side of things, they'll give membership a shot. Right.
And for those of you who have never had the privilege of meeting Sean Waltman or anything along those lines, I've had the privilege of working a couple shows with him. He is a sweetheart. I mean, he's a very nice man. But outside of that too, when it comes to wrestling, he's extremely knowledgeable, and anything that he lays down on record for ProWrestling.net, if you have the opportunity to get that, especially for free, I highly suggest you do so. He is very intelligent. He has great insights, and it's entertaining too. So definitely head over to ProWrestling.net and get that information. And listen to the free stuff, and if you like it, subscribe to the membership, because you're going to get information you don't get elsewhere. Which brings me, I guess, to another point real quick, and then I know Travis has a couple things he wants to ask you. How, as far as the reputation goes for a website like yours, and people, you'll hear wrestling fans sometimes say, I don't read the internet, or I don't go on quote unquote dirt sheets because they're always wrong. Well, I have, the only thing I could really think of in recent memory as a fan where I heard a lot of different things coming from every different direction was based around the CM Punk departure. Now, we actually went to Elimination Chamber, which was in your city, in Minneapolis, and people were talking. Somebody at the airport saw CM Punk get off the plane. He's going to be here. And every single show, it seemed like one website or another reported that Punk's close to resigning or that he's talking. And then eventually, after a while, when he wasn't close to resigning and he wasn't going to resign, then all those comments got rescinded, and then they said that they didn't have any sort of conversation between either party. What do you do in situations like that where people are, I guess, ripping a website like yours for not being accurate? Because I know you bust your ass and you put in a lot of times, like you said, an 18-hour day to try to give the people the accurate information on a timely basis. I guess, how do you do it, and how do you make sure that the information you get is correct, and how do you, deter all these detractors out there for you?
Yeah, when it comes to a situation like Punk, where very few people know what's going on, and really anything, the key is just taking the old honesty as the best policy approach. I'm not afraid to tell people I don't know. But here's what people are saying. That's kind of the approach I'll take on something like that, rather than just throw out there, Punk is coming back. There's sites out there that'll do it just for the traffic. They don't seem to care that they're wrong, the News with the Z sites. They just want to get as many clicks as possible. And then there's some that will just kind of spin it afterward and whatever. And it doesn't mean that you can't get misinformation. That can happen, certainly. It does. The key is just when you do have, let's say I get fed a bad story. It's just somebody heard something wrong. Somebody was working. That happens in this industry a lot, as you guys know. And the key then is, if you were wrong, admit you were wrong. Don't be afraid just to go out there and say, hey, we apologize for the error. Here's what was written. Here's what's actually happening, and we apologize for that, and move on. It happens. There was the longtime writer of the Charleston, South Carolina, Charleston Post-Courier is the website the newspaper that he writes for, Mike Mooneyham. He had a story. I felt so bad for him. He had something, Mae Young. He had a contact that it was in the home with Mae, and he was told that she had passed away. And it was just, it wasn't, Mike's not trying to make a name for himself and whatever. He's just reporting what he was told, and it was premature. She didn't die she had ultimately did a couple of days later, I think it was. But I know he felt terrible about it, and it's just like, it happens. You just have to, like any type of journalism, you're not going to have 100% factual information at all times. You do your damnedest to make sure you do. You double source things. You do everything within your power to make sure it's right. But if there is something wrong, it really is just as simple as owning it and admitting it and moving forward.
That's perfect advice for every boyfriend out there as well. You mess up, you say you're sorry, you get past it, put your head down and move forward. Perfect, Jason. Perfect advice.
Now, Travis, you had, like I said, you had the opportunity to listen to Jason's podcast. You got a lot of great information from him. Is there anything that stood out in that podcast that you want to ask Jason directly, or is there anything that's pressing on your mind in the world of professional wrestling right now that Jason's insight could maybe clarify it for yourself as well as our listening audience?
I've got one. I listened to it today, actually, Jason. It was good, entertaining. I really liked it. So sorry to hear that it's going to be gone for a handful of weeks, but I'll be looking forward whenever it comes back after football season.
Yeah, it'll be back in January for WrestleMania season for sure.
Perfect. And I listened to a handful of segments today. One that I can't get my head around. I don't know where they're going with it, and I'm not sure that I like what direction I think they might be going with it, is Rusev. Do you have any idea, any insight, any advice to somebody like me that wants to have an idea of where is Lana and Rusev going? Are they going in a positive direction, or are they going to have this guy be the next buyback that doesn't lose for a handful of months and then all of a sudden is buried?
I fear that same thing, that long term this could be, they build him up in a big way, and then whoever slays that dragon, it's downhill for the dragon afterward. That's on them to make sure that this has long-term success. I think they need to get away from all of the Vladimir Putin stuff. It can be fun at times, whatever, but it's going to run its course, and the character needs to evolve. And so I think the key, my best guess is that they ultimately end up feeding him to John Cena. I don't see Cena regaining the championship from Brock Lesnar this quickly, so he's going to need something to bounce back with, to get his mojo back. And whether it's they save it for WrestleMania, they do it sometime before then, I think John Cena will probably be the guy that ends up beating Rusev. And then from there, I don't think it has to be the end of the road for Rusev. He's still green, but you can see the improvement. He actually sells very well. And so long term, I think they can still have him bounce back from that, but you just never know what Vince McMahon's mood of the day is going to be. And so if he may just be looking, Vince is famous for, look at Fandango, for instance, all the craze over the Fandangoing and that whole dance bit, and that was Vince's shiny new toy, and he was pushing it to the moon. He was the guy behind all of that big Fandango push. And then the shiny new toy was replaced by another shiny new toy, and it's been all downhill for Fandango ever since. So you just never know what approach Vince McMahon is going to take with when it comes to various wrestlers.
Right, and I'm glad.
Just hope whatever approach he has, I hope keeps Lana on TV as much as possible. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah,
Vince loved himself some Lana. There's no doubt about that. So I think she'll be fine.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on Rusev's selling ability, Jason, because his selling ability on Sunday was fantastic. Selling an ankle throughout the match. It was. I think Sean actually tweeted out to sell it more, and I was looking at it. I was like, he's selling the hell out of it. So he's very good. He's very young, and he's a beast. So I hope they do something with him as well moving forward. I guess one question I had for you, and it's funny, I was driving to work the other day, and I'm trying to wrap my head around who the hell is the U.S. champion. I forgot who the U.S. champion was because it's been so irrelevant on WWE TV, and the guy carrying the title has been so irrelevant on TV lately. What do you see them doing with the U.S. title, or do you have any insights on where they're going with that and what they're doing with Sheamus?
Yeah, in fact, they set it up tonight on Main Event. It was actually a fairly newsworthy show, believe it or not.
Wow,
we got the announcement of John Cena and Brock Lesnar for Night of Champions in the rematch, and then they had Sheamus. It was just a match with Curtis Axel, kind of a throwaway match. But Cesaro was on commentary, and he came out and grabbed the. After the match was over, he picked up the U.S. title and gave it the loving look, and then handed it back to Sheamus. So it looks like that's going to be the program, and I know that's one those guys will personally be very excited about. That's going to be a really good physical. It should be a really good physical program between them. So that one, it's hard to care about the secondary titles because they have the secondary champions lose so often. It seems like in non-title matches. But that's one where if they take it seriously, if they do it right, they might actually be able to raise the prestige of that title.
Yeah, I agree, and I think with the Intercontinental title too, if they can somehow, if they're going to do Miz Dolph longer term, as long as they can draw the feud out to make it a longer term feud, I think that actually increases the value of the title itself. So I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what the WWE does in the next several months now. And the biggest thing is who beats Brock Lesnar. And now, do you think, as whether you're talking from a professional standpoint or from a fan standpoint, do you think he keeps it until 31 and drops it to Roman Reigns, or do you think something else happens?
I think that's what they have in mind right now. I mean, I think there's a reason Seth Rollins has money in the bank, and I know people are looking at that going, well, it's kind of a waste because he's not going to cash in on Brock, but I think the idea is that Reigns does beat Brock at WrestleMania 31, and then you have Rollins in play to go after his former stablemate. But I worry about Reigns. I see what they see. I mean, the guy has the look. He just has the cool factor. There's still a very limited move set with him. He's a guy who needs to improve on selling. He's a guy that he's very protected, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, Undertaker was very protected as well, and that seemed to work out just fine. But he really needs to improve in all areas of his game. You can tell when they lay out the promo for him, and it's very very brief, and he gets the cool lines to say. And then there's other times where he gets to kind of go out there and seemingly freestyle. He might have some bullet points, and it really shines through where there was one in particular on Raw recently where he just was like being playful with it and just didn't stay true to the character. He's green, but I mean, he's a very talented guy.
Right.
I just worry that 31 might be a little too soon for him, but I do think that's what they have in mind.
Right. And I know I've heard, potentially The Rock too. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Reigns, Brock is pretty much a lock at this point. But Travis, what do you think on that?
I think it's way too soon. I think, like Jason said, 31 is way too quickly to be putting something on Reigns. I like what I see from him most of the time, but I don't like him as a WWE champion contender right now. I think that was shown on Sunday night in a match that I thought was a great match between he and Randy Orton. I thought Randy Orton carried the entire thing, and Randy Orton, like Ryan had said last week on our show, is possibly the best in business, arguably the best wrestler in the company right now. And he carried that show with Roman Reigns, and I don't think that you want your champion going into a match needing to be carried. I think 31 is too quick. I wouldn't be against Brock Lesnar holding the belt until 32.
I mean, that would.
I mean, but whether it's The Rock that he beats or another John. Well, I mean, if they're going with Cena now, it probably wouldn't be that. Right. But even Daniel Bryan, I think. Now, the Daniel Bryan fans would lose their minds if their guy got beat by Brock Lesnar, but if it just to justify the end of the streak, if nothing else, I think they should at least consider prolonging Brock's title reign. But I just don't know what Brock's contractual status is coming out of next year's WrestleMania. I mean, if they can't strike a new deal, they may not have any choice but to take that belt off him.
Right. I mean, he's got.
That'll be some entertaining television right there, Jason. If everybody knows that he doesn't have a contract and everybody can see that Reigns isn't ready to take it from him, and that's the direction they're going, it'll be contract's over. He's got the belt. What are we going to do for 3 months? And it'll give us something to talk about, which will be pretty exciting.
Oh, and I fear it's a repeat of last year, where Daniel Bryan, if he the surgery is going to keep him out if he has to have it. It's still up in the air, right. But it sounds like he's going to, and it'll only keep him out 3 months. I mean, couldn't you just see it where the Daniel Bryan fans want their guy back in the title match at Mania if they're not happy with Reigns? And I don't know that it's as bad as it got with Batista, but I could definitely see some fans turning on Roman Reigns just because they don't think he's ready and they want someone else in that title match.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Jason, I guess I got 2 questions here left for you, and then we can let you go. I know you've been covering wrestling a lot here the past 48 hours, so you probably need a little breather.
Oh, hell, I'm doing it right now with the SmackDown taping as we do this. So all good.
The first of 2 questions here for you is, you've been covering wrestling a long time. You've interviewed a lot of people. Who's been your favorite person you ever got a chance to meet in the professional wrestling business and maybe interview or spend some time with? And is there a good story that goes along with that?
Oh boy, I mean, so many people. Some of them, I can't even get into just to protect sources.
No, absolutely.
There's the guys that I've dealt with over the years that it's been pretty public knowledge. I mean, I've really enjoyed Paul Heyman over the years. Sometimes it's challenging. Back when he was running ECW to figure out what was fact and what was fiction. Right. Just Incredible's a guy that just a great guy. He's had his issues, obviously, but he's in a really good place right now, and he's always just been a sweetheart of a guy. And he's actually coming to town in October, so I'm looking forward to getting together with him again. He's working in an upcoming indie show.
In Minneapolis?
Say again?
Is he working in Minneapolis?
Yeah, I think it's, I can't remember which promotion he said it was for, but it's sometime in October, and it's somewhere in the Twin Cities area. Meeting Vince was very cool at the Summer Slam press conference in 1999. Didn't get to spend a lot of time with him, but that day interacting, they had us backstage and everything, and so we were able to interact a little bit with The Rock and Steve Austin, and unfortunately, Triple H and China were there. Never saw them, and then did spend a couple of minutes with Undertaker, actually admiring I think it was like a pimped out truck that they had made for Taker, and he was out there. We were looking at it, and all of a sudden I looked behind me, and oh my God, here's Taker, and he's checking out his own truck. So that was kind of one of those cool moments.
Right. Yeah, and he's a massive man. I had a chance to meet him a couple times too, and he's when they say he's 7'1" on TV, I mean he looks every bit of it in person. So, and the last question, and Travis and I got into this last week, and with our podcast, sometimes we want to bring up some controversial topics or topics that are maybe not so mainstream, but we know is there. So with the recent release of Alberto Del Rio, with the contract situation with Rey Mysterio, the topic of racism in the WWE has come up from time to time, and we discussed it last week, and whether or not we think there's racism that exists in the company. I have a hard time to say that there is racism. I think maybe there's some ignorance there. But we look back at the history of the WWE title. So now I know the WCW version of the title was held by Rey Mysterio, was held by Alberto Del Rio. but I can't remember a minority holding the WWE title outside The Rock. If you want to, I guess, consider him a minority. But I guess he claims himself as a Samoan, even though his dad is African American. What is your take on this? Do you think there's potential racism within the WWE or within professional wrestling as a whole? Do you think it's ignorance, or do you think it's just coincidence that the fan base particularly doesn't maybe take to a minority superstar as much as they would like a John Cena? I guess, what's your take since you've been covering it so long? Because it's a very interesting topic. It is very pressing, but there's got to be some sort of reason behind it, or there's got to be something there, and I would love to hear your take on it, what you think.
Wrestling has been very slow to evolve over the years. I mean, I still remember growing up watching Colonel De Beers and Derek Dukes have a match where the goal was there. I think the loser was painted the other color. I mean,
Sure.
and that's just one example. And it's the Del Rio situation is an interesting one. The fact that if the story, we've only heard his side of the story. It's not like WWE's opening up about this, really. I mean, their PR staff isn't commenting on it. I'm sure they've been ordered not to.
Right.
If the story he's telling is accurate, that there was something said to him that he perceived as racist, and most people would, then how isn't the person who made that comment also fired?
Right.
Or some level of punishment? That, to me, is inexcusable. Again, if Del Rio is shooting straight, I know they want to cater to various, whether it's, they've always been looking for that Hispanic star. I mean, they had it with Eddie Guerrero and to Rey Mysterio to some extent as well. And now they're left really without one. And I know they'd love to solve that problem. I think some of it, when it comes to who gets pushed and who doesn't, maybe I'm just being naive here, but I wonder if some of it is just Vince McMahon, as a white male, doesn't connect, doesn't understand the culture of some of the minority wrestlers as well. And you look at the makeup of the writing team, it's not like it's always been just a room full of white guys, but it seems predominantly that way.
Right.
And I remember talking with Conan from WCW, and now he's with AAA.
Correct. Yep.
And that was his big contention, was that how do you expect a room full of white guys to write for a Hispanic character? And it's not like it can't be done, but it would be much easier if you just had someone that understood the culture involved in that process.
Do you think that's why potentially Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio were so successful when they were on the SmackDown brand when Paul Heyman was writing the show? Because he was used to that with ECW and working with characters from Japan, working with characters from Mexico, and understood those cultures. Do you think that's why maybe they were potentially more successful when Heyman was writing the SmackDown card back in the day?
I do, absolutely. I think Paul's been a guy. I mean, he's brilliant when it comes to the creative end of things, and he doesn't. He's a guy that I think prides himself on staying youthful. I know he's talked about having these think tanks for his other business where they bring in really bright college kids, feed them pizza, and they sit around and talk various ideas throughout the day, whatever the topic is. And he definitely stays current when it comes to music and things like that. And so I just think he's always tried to be very diverse in terms of maybe not living the culture, but understanding it. And it's just, Vince is immersed in this 24 hours a day, and I just don't think, a pushing 70-year-old white guy is going to be nearly as hip and understanding of various cultures. And I think that shows in the way that some of the characters are presented, where they're just very one-dimensional, stereotypical at times, and it's a shame that it's like that. Hopefully it's something that improves with time, but I mean, right now, the only Hispanic acts I can think of are like Los Matadores, for Christ's sake.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think we're all on the same page there. It's and maybe it is Vince, just his ignorance or what it might be, and maybe things will change once Triple H kind of gets the reins completely in his pocket. But Jason, man, it has been awesome. We definitely appreciate you coming in on our show and giving us some insight from your world and from your eyes, and you've been around the block quite a few times here in the business, so we definitely appreciate it. I know we will be listening in January for your podcast to come out. Everybody out there, again, prowrestling.net. Check out everything there. Become a premium member. Check out the free podcast. Follow them on Twitter. It's ProWrestlingNet. Are you going to tweet out any fantasy steals for us this year so we can get a good first-round pick?
Maybe once I figure them out, maybe. But I'm worried that some of the guys in my league might be paying attention. I'll have to look and see if they're following me. And if they're not, yeah, I'll definitely get some out there for you guys.
Awesome.
Thanks for being on, Jason. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Anytime.
Thanks a lot, Jason. All right, guys. Travis and I are going to be right back to finish up the show with you. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I'm different, yeah, I'm different. I'm different, yeah, I'm different. I'm different, yeah, I'm different. Pull up to the scene with my cellar messing. 2 chains got your girl on.
You are listening to The Pencil, a pro wrestling podcast with Renny D and friends, like me, Travis Mester, coming at you every Tuesday with our take on the world of professional wrestling. Listen to us on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at Pencil Podcast.
All right, and we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic interview with Jason Powell from ProWrestling.net. And I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. He does have a fantastic website. Travis can vouch for the podcast. Maybe he'll give you some inside information in the fantasy football. But we are back here, Travis and I, right now, to chat a little bit more about professional wrestling. And at this moment of the show, we are going to hop into the hot topics of the week as far as news and rumors. I picked out, I guess, 5 for this week here, Dirt. So let's hit them off here. The reason for the cinder block curb stomp on Monday Night Raw from Seth Rollins to Dean Ambrose was Ambrose is starring in the WWE film coming up to write him off TV. Thoughts?
I think it's a good move for Ambrose's character. I think it's nice to have him off TV for a couple weeks because he's so hot. When he comes back, he'll be even hotter. I don't like the idea of having him wrestle Raw, main event, SmackDown every week. So I like the fact that he'll be gone for a couple weeks. I think that's setting up perfectly for him to come back healthy after the cinder block situation. All of a sudden, we're going to set up for a main event at Hell in a Cell between Rollins and Ambrose. It's going to be a hell of a match.
Great match, absolutely. So I'll take the next one. Y2J's Night of Champions is his last appearance before he leaves. Not shocked. He comes around for about 3 pay-per-views. It's about 90 days their contracts are. RVD signed a similar one. He'll head back out on tour with Fozzy. I guess I'm sure we'll see him again, potentially Royal Rumble WrestleMania season, but he didn't come back this year until after, so I guess we'll see. Let's see here. Travis, this one's for you. Thoughts on potentially, and this is a rumor, there's no truth to this at this point, but AJ Lee potentially leaving the company. Could you see it?
Yes, I could see it. She's obviously with CM Punk in real life, and they are married. I believe they're married, right? Are they just together or are they married?
They're married. They got married a couple months ago now.
Yeah, they got married a couple months ago. I could see her leaving the company. She's got a championship feud right now with Paige, which I think will go on for another pay-per-view. Possibly after Night of Champions, we don't see her for a handful of months. I wouldn't be shocked. It'll give an opportunity to some other divas to come up and face Paige, which wouldn't be the worst thing. I am an AJ fan. I think she's an entertaining character, but no, I would not be surprised if she was gone for a while.
And I don't think she is. I think it was just that rumor. I mean, they wrote her back on the Monday Night Raw. We'll see what happened. And then I guess actually I'm going to skip to the last one here, and Jason touched on it, is Bully Ray leaving TNA. Is WWE possibly in his future? He mentioned on the Jim Ross podcast last week that the only thing he really has left to do in professional wrestling is a singles run in the WWE. The only thing is the WWE hasn't been too keen on rehiring old superstars from TNA, although they did do it with Rob Van Dam. I could see him doing it with Bully Ray or Bubba Ray Dudley, as we know him from the Dudley Boys. I just don't think they would sign them as a single. I think if they're going to sign Bubba Ray, they're going to sign them and Devon to try to strengthen the tag team division. I guess we will see. Time will tell. But there wasn't a whole lot as far as news and rumors this week. Outside of that, we do have a couple fan questions here real quick. The first question here is, should the WWE bring back the women's title, the cruiserweight title, and or the hardcore title? Travis?
I'll say yes to the cruiserweight title, no to the women's title, and no to the hardcore title. Cruiserweight title, I don't know how they would do it for size-wise, if it's weight, if it's height, if it's whatever. It might be a guy that looks small can be in it. But 3-hour Raw, I'd be all in for having a new cruiserweight belt for people to carry around, give some of the lower mid-card guys something to shoot for, maybe something to open a pay-per-view to get the crowd hot. So I'd be okay with that. The other two are unneeded.
Right, I agree. Divas title is the women's title. They just renamed it. Hardcore title with a PG audience, you can't have it. 3-hour Raw Cruiserweight title would benefit from that, as they do have some fillers on Raw, which can kind of be questionable at times. Another question here from somebody: why was it a smart move for the WWE to put the title on Lesnar? I'll give my thoughts real quick. I just think the entertainment value of Lesnar being a cross-sports superstar was too big to pass up. He brings legitimacy to the WWE. He brings legitimacy to the title. And the match at SummerSlam proved it. What's your thoughts on that one?
I would agree. That's the word you used. The word that is the most important. He's legitimate. People outside of the wrestling business see him as a legitimate champion. He walked out on Raw in Las Vegas, which was beautiful. I thought. I know you tweeted about this earlier this week. It's great that he came out in Vegas. I didn't put two and two together. That's a UFC town. He's fought there how many times in UFC? Now he's walking out with the WWE belt. I thought that was great. So, yeah, he's a legitimate champion. And from everybody outside the company, he makes sense.
Absolutely. And the last fan question here, we kind of touched a little bit on this with Jason. How would you book Lesnar moving forward in the next several months? I'm with Jason. I'm with a lot of people. I wouldn't have him on Raw and SmackDown. I'd have Paul Heyman be his guinea pig, cutting the promos, have him show up to the pay-per-views to defend the title, obviously to retain the title, but make it seem more like he's a special attraction to really push the pay-per-views. Obviously, that's going to push the network buys. He doesn't need. He's on a contract basis where he only has a certain amount of dates, so he's not going to be on all the Raws to begin with. I think that Batista's going to be in there somewhere, some way, shape, or form. Obviously, John Cena's going to be in there. There was talk about Cesaro. I guess we'll see. I can really see at this point my focus is on Cena and Batista and Randy Orton, I guess, in that standpoint of who's actually going to challenge for the title in the upcoming months. Travis?
I think it'll be very interesting the way that they go about it. I think that it could be a situation where he has some sort of disqualifying, either beats John Cena clean again. I don't know if that'll happen at Night of Champions. He'll retain the title one way or another, whether it's by disqualification, by just beating him unconscious, or whatever it might be. Following that, I wouldn't be surprised if he was not on the next couple pay-per-views, and the way that they could book that is to allow Batista to return. Randy Orton has not gotten his one-on-one rematch from his WrestleMania loss. Batista hasn't gotten his one-on-one championship match from his Royal Rumble win. Have those two fights for the number one contendership, have some sort of a tournament at a pay-per-view, and that final match being the championship to decide the number one contender with Paul Heyman sitting ringside. Something like that would be entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of different options to go. It's going to be interesting to see exactly what they do. All I know is that we are in a different age in professional wrestling, and specifically the World Wrestling Entertainment, with Brock Lesnar being the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. The show-off Dolph Ziggler is now our Intercontinental Champion. Paige is our new Divas Champion. 3 title changes at SummerSlam, leading us into the fall season of professional wrestling, and pretty soon, right around the corner, we're going to be on the road to WrestleMania. And I guess with that said, we have a couple new segments here for you that we're going to end the show with this week. We got Dirty's Deposition and Rennie's Rant. Basically, we're going to give each other here 5 minutes to kind of spew off at the microphone and our thoughts and our opinions on professional wrestling. Not saying they're right or wrong, but I'm telling you right now, mine is right and yours is wrong. Travis, you want to start us off, man, with yours?
I will start us off. My Dirty's Deposition for this week. Who knows if it'll be the first installment or if we'll do it every week, depending on how poorly it goes. I'm leaning towards a situation in which I read on dirt sheets, I see on websites, people saying that part-time guys in the WWE is bad for the WWE, is bad for growing talent, for putting over younger talent. I completely disagree. I would say that part-time guys save the WWE. They do not ruin it, like some might say. A focus on the idea that now is the reality era. We hear Triple H say that oftentimes, that this is the reality era as opposed to the Attitude Era 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I like to think that the Paul Heyman promo has something to do with that on Monday Night Raw last night. He talked about Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock. How long was their run on the top? 3-4 years tops. John Cena, Randy Orton, 10, 12 years we've seen these guys at the top. It's a different era. I like that it's a different era, and I think the fact that there's part-time guys that come back, and I'm going to name off a handful of them, I don't think that they're hurting the product one bit. I think they add legitimacy to the product. Nowhere you could see that better than Brock Lesnar on Sunday night at WrestleMania. Brock Lesnar is a part-time star. He comes back. When his music hits, everybody's on their feet. I know Ryan said previous, he gets goosebumps. So do I. That's good for the company. That's good for the product. Brock Lesnar came back. He's beaten Undertaker. He's main evented WrestleMania. He's going to main event WrestleMania next year, more than likely, with the belt. Then we've got a guy like Batista who will probably be coming back in the next couple months. He main evented WrestleMania last year. And what did he do? Tapped out to Daniel Bryan. Then he jobbed to the Shield at multiple pay-per-views afterwards. Don't tell me that a part-time star comes back and he's not putting over younger talent. Reigns, Rollins, Ambrose, Daniel Bryan, those guys beat Batista to a pulp for 2 months before he left. He's a guy that helped out the company. The Rock, he's main evented WrestleMania 28, 29 against John Cena, put John Cena over in his match on his way out. He's a guy that gets flack for being a part-time guy coming back. Triple H, if you want to count him, he wrestles once or twice a year. He's a guy that lost to Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania to help put Daniel Bryan, shove him into the spotlight at WrestleMania like everyone wanted. RVD is a mid-card guy that's on a part-time schedule every now and again. He's a guy that's not winning every match he comes back to. He's just another body. He's a familiar face. He's somebody that people like us remember from their childhood. I don't see a negative in having those guys come back. Jericho, we've mentioned on this show. Chris Jericho, he's put Bray Wyatt over now. He's had the opportunity to work with CM Punk for a title at WrestleMania. I think he did fantastic in that feud as well. He's a guy that's welcomed back whenever he comes because he knows what he's there for, and he's a familiar face. And anytime his music hits, it's popular. The Undertaker's another guy. He's a spectacle every year. He might be done now for all we know, but those are 7 guys that are part-time guys that I think are making the business. They're not breaking it whatsoever. They put over their average stars as best as they possibly can, and I can appreciate that. And I know that a lot of times people say they get sick of John Cena. We cheer for the guys that are going against him, and the reason for that is because it gets stale. The product is oversaturated. We're looking at 15, 20 hours of wrestling every week or 2 weeks that we're watching. We see John Cena so much, we see Randy Orton so much that we get sick of them. But then we don't want part-time stars back because they hold down the up-and-comers. I think both of those things are true. I think they're oversaturated, and I know that the part-time guys are taking spots away from the younger guys. But I think those can both be positive for the entire product. I want to hear music hit that surprises me. I want to hear music hit that excites me. I want to see those guys come back. It's sports entertainment for a reason. There's a reason that we're not going to see a Joe Montana come out in a Super Bowl and go against Aaron Rodgers. It's impossible. That's real NFL football. It's not the WWE. If you don't know that you're watching WWE as a sports entertainment, then you're watching the wrong product. The idea that we could have a situation in a couple of years of CM Punk's music hitting and him coming back as a part-time wrestler, if that doesn't excite somebody, then I would say that they're not a WWE fan. So those are the types of things that I thought about for my initial Dirty's deposition. It's not scientific, and it's not all facts, but it's my take on it, and that's what it is.
Yeah, good stuff, man. And I'm actually in agreement with you on that. And I'm actually going to go on my Rennie's rant on the other side. That's no secret. I am an indie guy, quote unquote. I've been in professional wrestling 11 years. And if you look at the landscape of the WWE at this point, it is changing, and its tipping point happened Sunday at Summer Slam. If it's any indication of where the WWE is going, take one look at Seth Rollins, take another look at Dean Ambrose. 2 guys who carved their teeth out in the independent wrestling scene. Seth Rollins as Tyler Black on the indie scene. Dean Ambrose as Jon Moxley on the indie scene. Both guys had a chance to really perform in front of smaller crowds, 100 people at times, to really learn the entertainment value of professional wrestling. They main evented Monday Night Raw. This is where professional wrestling is going. It is not scientific, as Travis just mentioned a little bit ago. Guys like Tyler Black or Seth Rollins and Jon Moxley or Dean Ambrose, they bust their ass on the indie scenes, and they know what it takes to get over, and they're showcasing their talent and their skills on a weekly basis. They're putting their bodies through hell. There's no reason that anybody should ever take a powerbomb on steel chairs unless they're trying to prove a point, which is exactly what Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins did on Monday. You take a look at the recent signings by the WWE in Prince Devitt, now known as Fergal Devitt, and Kevin Steen, both big-time indie studs. Now with the WWE in developmental, I don't expect to see them down there very long. Triple H understands with the Performance Center, they have the utilities to develop any person into any character that they want. Less time spent on honing their skills as far as their in-ring ability and more time spent on their charisma, their mic skills, and their persona leads to quicker time on Monday Night Raw, Friday night SmackDown, and pay-per-views, which leads to increased ticket sales and merchandise sales for the company. They're not stupid, they're businessmen, and they get it. The future of professional wrestling, as far as the WWE goes, it's in the indie guys. I'm not saying it's bad if they sign a football player and they get them down into developmental in Orlando, but guys who have cut their teeth on the scene that I've grown up to love in the last 11 years are the guys who are going to be most successful. There's a reason Daniel Bryan went over for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania. Not only was he the best in the world at what he did inside the ring, but he cut his teeth on the scene that I did, and he was well-deserving of it. If any indication of that was the night after WrestleMania, when I was in the crowd, along with Travis, and 17,000 other people chanting, "You deserve it," when Daniel Bryan came out for his initial, his initial interview after WrestleMania. I'm excited about the future of the WWE, and for anybody that doesn't see it or doesn't see it that way, you're completely, utterly nuts. The days of Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold, they're not here anymore. And if they are here, it's a part-time basis like Travis just mentioned. It's not a bad thing for professional wrestling. It's a great thing because guys like Brock Lesnar, guys like Chris Jericho, guys like RVD can come in and put over guys like Seth Rollins, guys like Cesaro, guys like Dean Ambrose, and guys like Daniel Bryan, because for the next 10 to 20 years, these are the names that we're going to remember. These are the names that if we end up having kids, they're going to watch on TV because they're the young studs of professional wrestling. It's exciting. Wrestling has gotten great again. It's fun to watch, and I can thank a lot of the young talent on the professional wrestling roster for that. With the spotlight on indie wrestling, I do want to take this time to showcase a certain event that is going on. If anybody is in the Minnesota, Wisconsin area, Red Cliff, Wisconsin, this Saturday for a company that I used to wrestle for, Heavy on Wrestling, they're having a huge show called Legendary, and it's called Legendary for a reason. They have guys like Roddy Piper, Bob Holly is on the card, Lance Hoyt, a lot of the great indie workers that I worked with. Booker T is on the card. The Steiner brothers are on the card. This is a huge professional show as far as wrestling goes, and I'm jealous I can't be there. They're actually doing a tag team seminar earlier in the day. You can go to heavyonwrestling.com to get your tickets. But if you have nothing going on Saturday and you get a chance to see guys like the Steiner brothers, Booker T, Roddy Piper, Stevie Richards, along with the great talents that we have on the independent wrestling scene, it's really something special, and I highly encourage everybody to do that. Quick shout out to my boy Arya Davari. I've been drinking Bud Light Limes this entire podcast. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it was free, although I know Arya likes his Bud Light Limes and his martinis or margaritas in the morning. Hope all my boys in Minnesota are doing well on the indie scene. Tuck your chins and stay safe, boys. Travis, we've had a great second episode, man. I'm going to say that we definitely did better this episode than we did episode 1. I'm looking forward to episode 3 this week in between. It seems like it drags on forever. We text each other things all week long. I'm excited for the next episode. I'm excited for this episode. I mean, our first episode, it doesn't maybe not seem like a lot to you guys out there, but we had over 200 different unique listeners, which, you know, when you just come on a whim and come up with a podcast, that's pretty special. So I really hope we can do better than that for this one. Any special shout-outs that you want to shout out there, Dirt?
Oh man, I mean, I got a close friend. I got a friend Nick coming up for the weekends. I'm not going to be able to see him. I'm going to be down in your neck of the woods, but you'll be crossing me on the interstate. I suppose I'll be passing Nick as well. So a shout out to Nick. His birthday obviously is coming up. Or it was actually a couple days ago now. So
absolutely. Happy birthday! Happy birthday to our boy Nick and our boy Leroy.
Yeah, our boys Nick and Leroy, both birthday guys. So it's been an exciting week. We'll be excited to kick you back up here next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, thank you so much for listening. I know sitting down listening to us babble on for an hour and 20 minutes. If that's your thing to do, great, because it should be. It's fun. We're entertained by doing it. We love doing it. We're going to continue to do it. Tweet us at Pencil Podcast with any questions you might have. You can tweet our individual Twitter accounts. It's at Travis Mester for my boy Dirt on the line with us. I'm at Real Renny D. This podcast is available to subscribe to on iTunes, PodBean, Stitcher, and YouTube. Next week, we are finalizing details for our guests, for our guest singular. I will be tweeting out that information as soon as it is finalized. But we got a week of professional wrestling until then, and a lot of loose ends that need to be tied up. But you did hear here tonight that John Cena will be challenging Brock Lesnar for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship at Night of Champions. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next week, back and better than ever. It's Renny D and my boy Dirt. You guys take care. Thank you.
I'm here to show the world. I'm here to show the world.
Dolph Ziggler is here to show you the world, and I'm here to tell you about the world of professional wrestling. This is Renny D, an 11-year veteran of the professional wrestling business and host of The Pencil, a professional wrestling podcast available on iTunes, Stitcher, PodBean, and YouTube. Subscribe today and follow us on Twitter @PencilPodcast for more inside information on the world of professional wrestling.